Alright, your United States Environmental Protection Agency Office of Solid Waste Emergency Response Directive 9610.16, Guidance of Federal Field Citation Enforcement, October 6, 1993, Originating Office, OSWER, Oswer. Directive, Table of Contents, Transmittal Memorandum, Concurrence Memorandum, Revisions of the two directives, Federal Enforcement, Regional Program Elements, Selected Violations of Federal Underground Storage Tank Regulations, Expedited Compliance Order, Settlement Agreement, Expedited Enforcement Compliance Order, Settlement Agreement for Approved States. Alright, the memorandum. Underground Storage Tank Federal Field Citation Enforcement, Dave Ziegel, Director, Office of Underground Storage Tanks, Waste Management Division, Directors, Region 1 through 3, 5 through 9, Water Division, Directors, Region 4 and 10, Regional Council, Regions 1 through 10. Office of Underground Storage Tank is today issuing the Oswald Directive 961016, revised guidance for the Underground Storage Federal Field Citation Enforcement. The guidance replaces the Oswald Directive 96114. Issued April 6, 1992. During the past year, one half of 5 additional regions have instituted field citation programs, bringing the total number to 8. The additional experience gained during this period has led the Environmental Protection Agency to revise its federal field citation program. Alright, in the February year of the Conference of Federal Field Citation sponsored over underground storage tanks, Office of the Enforcement and Office of General Counsel held in Denver, Colorado, attending the region for the Underground Storage Tank Regional Program Manager staff and attorneys. The purpose of this conference was to review the federal field citation program based upon the experience to date, revise, expand as appropriate. The Denver Conference produced a list of recommendations for the revisions of the program. Over the Office of Underground Storage Tank has coordinated this effort, getting the significant input from the regions of the Office of Enforcement, Office of General Counsel. 2 drafts of this document have been circulated for review during these past few months. Attached is revised underground storage field citation guidance for the major change of the document listed with an attachment with a memo entitled Revision to Guidelines Federal Field Citation Enforcement, October 1993. The changes broaden the scope of the program, expanding its coverage to include environmental sensitivity areas, significantly increase the number of violations that are citable with a field citation. In addition to the guidance include procedures for issuance of the field citation, approving the codified states containing substitute citations for use of the approved states, and specify the limited circumstances in which the Environmental Protection Agency may issue citations in such state. If the Environmental Protection Agency issued field citations in the state which have been approved but not yet codified, the regional inspector should use the substituted citation from form marked for approved states, writing down the comparable federal violations cited additional with the state violations cited. This guidance does not contain new information on the issuance of field citation from federal facilities. A section for the purpose of it has been reserved the interim in the region. Besides the issue field citation federal facility, it should carry no penalty. Additional topics discussed at Denver, which have not been incorporated into this document, include the tracking of field citations which have been issued and the deputizing state and local government inspectors to issue citations. The revised underground storage federal field citation guidance has received formal concurrence. Copies attached for Office of the Enforcement and Office of General Counsel. Special thanks to all those who participated. Extended process to improve the guidance. Please contact Jerry Parker of my staff, 703-308-88884, which any questions or comments, and then it has the attachments for regional branch chief program managers, regional underground storage tank attorneys, Office Enforcement, Office General Counsel members, and management team and desk officer. Office of Underground Storage Tank management team and desk officers. Alright, your memorandum, Guidance of Federal Field Citation Enforcement, David Deagle, Director of the Office of Underground Storage Tank, Susan Oka, for acting as Enforcement Counsel for the RCRA Enforcement Division. Attached revised guideline federal field citation enforcement guideline has been put together with the assistance of the staff attorney. If your office accepts the document current with, please indicate your concurrency below. Thank you for the office continuing participation in the project. Alright, then there's a memorandum of guidance, a federal field citation to Lisa K. Fredman, Associated General Counsel, Solid Waste and Munchie. Attached to guided federal field citation guidance has been put together. Assistant Staff Attorney Office of the document concurrent would please indicate the concurrency below. Thank you, Office Continuing Participation Project and the Associated General Counsel. Alright, revisions of guidance for the Federal Field Citation Enforcement, October 1993. The guidance of the Federal Field Citation Enforcement, OSPR Directive 9611014, was issued in April 92. Since then, 7 regionals have been implemented field citation program. National concurrency with a review experience with considered improvement is based on the extensive discussion with the regional staff attorneys, Office of General Counsel, Office of Enforcement. A number of revisions have been made with the revised document. Are discuss greater detail in relation to the field citation overall enforcement effort over the advantage of issuing field citation in certain circumstances, explaining the field citation appropriate response for the underground storage tank violations of environmental sensitive areas. Emphasize that if the regional wishes to issue warnings as part of the enforcement program, the warnings may not be performed in a field citation without a penalty. Discuss the difference between issued field citation state with the received state program approval that has not, namely, regions must be cite regulations approved states. The document also provides model citations for use of approved states. Contains discussion procedure criteria extending with the deadline with the compliance with the terms of federal field citation limited circumstances. Explains procedures to file settlement with the penalties are to be sent to different addresses. Discusses the needs for regional standard operation procedures. Suggest the number of the basic elements should be included with the standard operation procedures. Add number of the violation penalty to amount listed applicable violation, including violations involving hazardous substance underground storage tank where the threshold for the number of the tanks and total hazardous substance capacity is at facilities are not exceeded. Outline basic procedure issuing field citation Indian land with the preserve and section to explain the procedure for the issuing field citation at federal facilities. Encourage regions to engage in outreach activities in order to inform the regulated community with the public about the field citation program. Explain how the federal field citation program is related to future development implementation state local field citation program. Add language to settle agreements stating that signing the owner and operator waives any objection to the EPA jurisdiction. In addition, some sections of the guidance have been reordered to improve the readability, ensure the local organization of the document. Finally, outdated information for the development over the field citation program has been replaced with more current information. Your guidance for federal field citation enforcement, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Office of the Underground Storage Tanks, October 1993. Federal Enforcement Overview. The Office of the Underground Storage Tank Program Implementation's approach is to build underground storage tank programs state level, and states are primarily responsible for the enforcement of underground storage tank regulation. Regions perform compliant with the inspection of the underground storage tank sites and the tank take enforcement actions generally in conjunction with the place of the state. Where the state lacks enforcement resource for the Indian lands of the federal facility. One enforcement option of the field citation traffic ticket citation issued on site by inspectors generally carrying a penalty. Field citations are currently being used at the number of the environmental programs, federal, state, local level, including underground storage tank programs. In the experience of many of the states and local underground storage tank enforcement programs, field citation is extremely useful in addressing many prevalent clear-cut violations relatively easy correct. Address these violations using the established enforcement methods such as the formal administrative proceedings under Title 40 CFR Part 22, whereas greater commitment, staff, and resources which may be difficult to obtain, which must complete the time and the resource of the staff directs to relates in violations not inappropriate. Adjust for the field citation program when the citation program is properly designed. Violators will issue certain citation clear-cut violations have great incentive to correct problems. Many pay penalties to contest. Thus, in an appropriate circumstance, field citation enforcement is less resourceful and intrusive than the traditional method of the underground storage tank enforcement. Resources that has served the citation issued on the spot and preparation of formal legal documents procedures such as administrative appeals are minimized. When field citation is developed, expire by the date of the enforcement and process, they encourage the owner of the operators to come in compliance with the effective of the resource of the efficient manner by removing the incentive of expanding the time of the resource of mitigating large penalties typical for more formal enforcement actions. Owners, operators who receive Field citation should see clearly advantage in the focusing energy, economic resources of the achieving compliance. Thus, the field citations are critical with the components for the Office of an Underground Storage Tank and efforts for the achievement of the high rates of the components among regulated entities with minimal expenditure of the public and private resources. This guidance is intended for the help of the region establish and operate field citation program, but should not be construed the mandate field citation in place of other existing enforcement mechanisms. When an inspection conducted, is the essence of 3 potential outcomes: compliance, no enforcement action taken; 2, noncompliance filed with the issue warrants field citation; 3, noncompliance filed with the more traditional enforcement. Of course, in the theory of the set forth in the 4th outcome, where the noncompliance, no action is taken, however, the outcome is neither common nor desirable. Field citation there are not separate from more formal enforcement mechanisms, complementary aspects of the enforcement program. Figure 1. Figure 1 shows the role of the field citation in federal underground storage tank enforcement, idealized and specialized progress. You have a targeting scheme, joint inspection within the states, goes in splits in compliance, field citation, administrative complaint. Your field citation splits into compliance and settlement with a non-conformance, no settlement. Administrative to administrative complaint. Administrative complaint goes to non-compliance unilateral order and continued non-compliance in civil judicial enforcement, or administrative complaint could go to compliance penalty paid. Or field citation, more formal enforcement procedural distinct. They must be shared with identical objective for the increase of the rate of the regulated compliance with community compliance. Each should be chosen when the appropriate conditions is for use exist. For example, the field citation should be chosen when the violation is clear-cut with a easily verifiable, easily correctable list of the citation violation. Generally, field citation should only be issued for the first-time violators. More formal enforcement must be pursued. For all other violations, the field citation is ignored if the owner and operator otherwise refuses to settle. More formal enforcement should be pursued. Underground storage program, staff, legal enforcement, and counsel for the several region for the participate with the work group effort to develop the procedure for the federal enforcement using field citations. The guidance document is a result of the effort. The attempts to serve the work group participants' interest with the field citation in a variety of circumstances address concern with the enforcement program fairly uniformly applied across the region, since some key components of federal citation programs identical with the region of region. However, the flexibility provided with the guidance and relationship between field citation existing with enforcement capability should provide with considerable room with accommodating local needs. On the score, it is important to emphasize that field citation enforcement non-supplement existing enforcement options. Discretion exercising existing options, warning of the other enforcement tools remaining changed, unchanged change. Introduction field citation should blend into regional enforcement choices. Also, regions will continue to select the violations facilitate to target with parameters of the guidance of the based on local needs subject to the previously issued enforcement guidelines. Finally, availability of the federal field citation should not diminish the region efforts to assist states and localities in building on a strong underground storage tank enforcement programs. In February 1993, the Office of Underground Storage Tank and the Office of Enforcement Office of the General Counsel had a conference to review the field citation program, assist the effectiveness, identify the potential improvements, provide valuable how-to information in these regions prior to developing the field citation program. After the presentation data of the region implemented the field citation program, region reports and general discussion conference addressed a number of issues, including implementation of the regional program, regional targeting, tracking procedure, standard operating procedure, use field citation, federal facilities, Indian lands, legal issues associated with the field citation. One goal of the conference was to publicize with a considerable suspect with the field citation in the regions where they had been issued, encouraging all regions to initiate the development of their own field citation program. Similar to the guidance of the document has revised result of the input of the participant at the conference of the order to reflect the recent program of experience facility development, regional field citation program. The Office of General Counsel, Office of Enforcement have endorsed the field citation, have reviewed, concurred all changes of the document. 2. Your regional program elements. Guide for the region presented with the following section. The guidance should be considered in the context of the regional overall enforcement strategy and priorities. Alright, selecting appropriate violation guidance. Provide a framework for allowing regional to address the certain violation field citation guidance intended to ensure the region is developed an appropriate violation judicially implemented for the program reasonably, providing a list of violations appropriate with the field citation guidelines selected among the violations. Each region select a violation to be cited from Attached list of violation regions may not include the list of violation per not included in the attached list. Contingencies among the region will be further assured with the training of the following criteria generally appropriate for selecting violation to be cited. Select violations clear-cut, easily verifiable. Select violations which are easily correctable. Select first-time violators only. Determine whether the violations of any of the appropriate field citation program requires considerable discretion, with experience show that the field citation program works most effectively in achieving the compliance. If the violations are clear-cut, inspector exercise with little discretion in citing the violations established. Field citation programs have found out easily identified violations, either if they have to or don't require the least amount of the inspector's judgment field, making it easier to provide clear guidance for the inspector, facilitate the contingency among the inspectors. On the other hand, the region may believe certain violations clear-cut, very serious in terms of the environmental harm threatened, require more formal enforcement response. List of violations appropriate for the field citation program accompanied with the guidance relieve the region of some of the burden making of the decision. However, the reasonable with each of the reasons designating which of the violation will be appropriate to for the field citation program given the specific regional needs and resources listed. Violation of the regional standard operation procedure with the attached list verbatim section below of the regional standard operating procedure, selecting the preferred approach of the region may achieve the target certain prevalent high priority violation or violations, leak detection and requirement that must guide strategy for the region for the use of the state program lacks enforcement authority with regulations in certain programs area regions need to fill key cap of the coverage or the send of an important message to the violators. However, the region enforcement place for the state of the region may find advantages to include all appropriate violation field citation enforcement programs as long as they meet the above reference criteria. Guidance when using citations. Guidance established for the procedure for the issuing citations describes some of the appropriate circumstances for the inspector to issue citations. Some of the inspector, one who implements the program, is in the field of the region, must clearly establish the extent of the discretion allowed to the inspector determining whether the field citation general parameters set forth the field citation provided additional enforcement tool. Inspectors must be instructed on how to respond when they find violations addressed and be approved appropriately with the field citation. The proper use of the field citation must be measured again with the backdrop of the region with existing authority to issue warning or pursuing the existing enforcement, measuring all violations of underground storage tank requirements. Although the primary objective of the enforcement program is to achieve the compliance with the formal enforcement mechanisms such as found in Title 40 CFR Part 22, normally will appropriately with the participant in particular circumstances among these instances involve repeating violation payment with more significant penalty may effectively achieve the EPA's enforcement goals. The guidance is intended to provide framework for the inspector discretionary use of the field citation enforcement option, though for the guidance of phrase and the terms of action for the inspector would take in a typical case, but leave the rooms of the exemption for the circumstance of the inspector judgment so warrant. The following discussion outlines 3 basic enforcement options available to address the violation of the underground storage tank requirements. Alright, 1. Warnings. Although warnings can be useful for the first step of the enforcement process, the regional inspector generally should consider the issuing citations in all cases where the violation which is in the region to determine if the appropriately address the file citation or discover the field citations are designed to uniformly address a certain violation, promote the quick resolution violation with assessment of a small penalty. Therefore, when a region inspects the facility, inspectors should consider the issuing the field citation rather than warning violations which regional have determined that may be appropriate for the candidate of the field citation program in order to keep the field citation program distinct from existing enforcement programs. Warrant issue may not be with the form of the field citation without penalty. 2. Citation. For several situations, the inspector will typically issue with a citation. The inspector may issue citation many violations identified in a site. However, if the number of the violation found exceeds the X number set in each of the region, the inspector should forego issuing field citation with the use more formal existing enforcement methods instead. Once a region is selected with a violation appropriate for the field citation program, trained inspector for the procedure of the field citation inspector routinely issues the field with the citation all appropriate violation found in the facility. Each region will have the discretion in place upper limit of the number of violations that may be cited on one site. The threshold set below the point of beyond the number of the violation, regardless of the nature of the violation, such as the facility will surely seriously outlaw compliance. Requires more formal enforcement purposes. At this point, with the formal enforcement response is likely to be more effectively used in field citations. As general manner suggests thresholds between 3 and 10 violations. The guidance does not suggest the predetermined cap of the cumulative dollar amount of the penalties that may be set up with the field citation. However, the natural cap of the extent each region foregoing issuing field citation number of the citable violations on a site exceed the number fixed for the region said. See preceding section. The region may want to consider the particular effort of the total cumulative subject of the penalty amount of the proposed field citation may have on settlement and assessments. The amount should be below the point amount of the violator no longer has incentive to correct the violation, pay the penalty instead of resisting compliance. During joint inspection, the regional inspector should usually note the site of the violation, site by the state inspector for the state penalty for the lease of equivalent state with the primary enforcer and the program region usually with the take of the enforcement action only with the circumstance of the note of the first paragraph of the guidance document. Therefore, if it is likely that during the joint inspection, regional inspectors will defer with the state program regulations authority not to cite the violation, say the inspector's site, but generally this will be the case where the penalties of less equivalent federal penalties, on the other hand, may be the case for the field citation will serve as important federal enforcement objectives. For example, the sending of the signal to regulate with the community about the enforcement initiative of these cases, then a field citation federal enforcement measure might be reinforced with the same message. Inspectors will usually issue citations for the first-time violators only if the only found upon the inspection cited violation has not been corrected. The inspector should generally use the Part 22 procedures. If then later inspection uncovers different violations, inspectors should not use the field citation. Limiting the field citation first-time violators makes sense for the period of the inspector, but the citation penalty with the sense of the violator to bring the facility with the compliance to, with the keeping compliance. The inspector should guide the goal of the field citation program to achieve with the rapid resource of the fresh compliance with rather than penalize the owner and operator's regulatory violations when conducting inspection. Critical that the inspector finally fully conduct the inspections early with complete with the inspector report. The field citation is not issued because of the number of the violations above the threshold. Field citation, the field citation settlement is not returned. It is meant to the pursuit of the standard enforcement based on the inspection report. Therefore, will field citation may be expedited. Correction, penalty phase enforcement quality effort will apply, but the underlying inspection should not be abbreviated. And 3, standard enforcement inspectors should discover that not only violation appropriate with the field citation program, but other violations as well. But the inspector should address the violation site using more formal existing enforcement methods to refer to the case to state appropriate section action. The use of the guidance more with the formal enforcement typically refer to the procedure for the issuing and administrative complaint for the compliance, or including assessing civil penalties, conducting administrative enforcement process governed by the Title 40 Part 2. Consolidated rules prior to participating, governing and administrative the assessment of the civil penalties, revocation of suspension permits, or Part 22, or crop. Your crop outlines major steps of the administrative injunction process that prevents with the various authority of the agency's official process. More formal enforcement methods include the issuing of the corrective actions order under pursuant to Title 4 CFR Part 24 Civil Judicial Enforcement Underground Storage Tank Requirements. And selecting those violations when appropriate with the field citation for the region will affect they'll also be identified with the violations because of the potential environmental harm of the other character of the non-clear cut, but there should be addressed with more formal existing enforcement mechanism. The more formal enforcement method may also be the appropriate response to some of the circumstances, but the field citation would otherwise be appropriate. For example, the total number of individual violations which are appropriate with the field citation surpass the threshold, multiple violations are repeated. Another case for the clear cut violation might be addressed with more enforcement and for formal enforcement with the case for the clear cut, not easily correctable violation. In this case, the field citation may not serve the goal of the encouraging compliance with it might appear to treat the violator mildly compared to the penalties applicable under penalty policy for the general violation. Regions will need to assess how to maximize the resource while bringing in many facility with compliance as possible. The guidance phrase for the inspector will know that it will action for the take of the typical case when in the exercise of the enforcement discreet to determine that the deviation of the guidance will result. More effective compliance, more efficient for the enforcement resources of the inspector are not bound to follow the guidelines. This approach consistent with the guidelines for the Environmental Protection Agency of penalty policies and procedures. Alright, in order guidance for the penalty amount, in order to ensure the penalty amount for the differ the region with the same violation consistent with the standard penalty amount that have been set for the guidance for the police penalty amounts are either $50 to $150 to $300 consistent among the region for the important with the achieve of the fairness of the treatment. Regulated community for the select of the regional penalty and the amount for the case of the multiple violation penalties should be tabled. General field citation program set penalty amount according to severity of each of the violation category. Violation penalties should be assessed per facility rather than per tank. For side of the penalties attached violation, the important but the stress of the field citation program penalties relatively high, greater than $500 per violation, may discourage owners and operators agreeing with it to sell. But on the other hand, penalties they have enough to catch for the attention of owner and operators. General field citation program should operate optional whenever the penalties are geared primarily to achieve the compliance rather than penalize violators. Alright. Just looking to see when the next paragraph is. Um, uh, we're gonna cut the tape there.